What's going on, everybody? It's Aurora YGO, and welcome back to another episode of Sleeper Sunday. So Sleeper Sunday, for those of you that don't know, is a series I came up with showcasing fun hidden decks you may not know about that can deal quite a bit of damage in the proper hands. We'll be going over a basic deck list, strengths, weaknesses, what can be done to make the deck better, and of course a few replays to see the deck in action. In today's episode, we're going to be taking a look at the Adventure Token series, as Konami intended. So Adventure is a series of cards that list and support the Adventure Token in the text, releasing in Deck Build Pack Grand Creators in January of this year, 2022, with their most recent support being just out of Darkwing Blast in October. The playstyle revolves around summoning an Adventure Token to the field, then having a variety of different effects based on the other things you have, such as quick effect bouncing, negation, stat modification, burn, etc. Adventure actually has and still does to a point see competitive play, at a few points being part of the best decks of their respective format. However, it was only a small engine, typically a 9-card package with 5 unique cards among them, which we will point out in the video, but this video will instead focus on playing the deck in its purest form instead of being as an engine. So let's start off with one of the most recognized cards in the Adventure package, that being Water Enchantress of the Temple. So Water Enchantress starts off our line of cards that say if you control an Adventure token, you can special summon this card from your hand. Literally every single monster in the archetype says this, so I will not be pointing this out for any of the other ones, but they all also have their own unique effects as well. Water Enchantress being that you can banish it from your hand or graveyard to add a Rite of Aramesir from your deck or graveyard to your hand. And if you control an Adventure token, you can place a field spell that mentions Adventure token from your deck face up in your field zone. Something that people don't really tend to know about it because, they just use it for the first effect. Because it is such an important card and she mentions it directly, I'm just going to go ahead and talk about Rite of Aramesir right here. So Rite of Aramesir is the main way to get your Adventure token on the board. It says if you control no Adventure token, you can special summon one Adventure token, which is a Fairy Earth level 4 with 2000 attack and defense. Then, if you do not control Fateful Adventure, you can place one Fateful Adventure from your deck face up in your spell and trap zone, but you cannot activate the effects of monsters on the field the turn you activate this card, except special summon monsters. So it's like the main part about the Adventure engine that kept it restricted in a sense, because if your deck relied on the effect of one of your normal summons, or you needed the effect of one of your normal summons in general, then you couldn't really get away with the Adventure token engine as easy. But this is the main way you're going to be getting your token out, as well as getting access to all of your other pieces, which is why Water Enchantress is so important. So another card that actually just came out of Darkwing Blast is Celestial Apparatus Tesia. Sorry if I stutter on any of these names because I'm so used to the non-localization versions, at least in terms of the Darkwing Blast cards, so bear with me. But this is a level 4 Earth Fairy that you can probably find some sort of way to use this with a Shizu, I don't know. But it says you can reveal a card in your hand that mentions Adventure token, and add a spell that mentions Adventure token from your deck to your hand, except a normal spell, which, by the way, is literally every single spell in the archetype except for Rite of Aramesir. And it says you cannot special summon monsters the turn you activate this effect, except an Adventure token or monsters that mention it. So this and the other card that came out along with it are literally the only cards in the entire deck that give you some sort of a Xeno lock, which is probably what should have been on the cards in the first place, like Rite of Aramesir, instead of using the normal summon effect restriction, because that actually can hurt you as well as the Adventure player. But this card is absolutely fantastic, being able to fetch you literally any spell you want in your deck other than Rite, which you do have a non-normal spell way of getting to your token, so don't worry about that. It's just all around one of the best cards in the entire deck. Something that can't be said about the next card being Magicore Warrior of the Relics. It's a level 4 Fire Warrior with 2300 attack and 1000 defense. It can't attack unless you control Adventure token, and at the end of the battle phase, if your monster that mentions Adventure token battled, you can set one trap that mentions Adventure token directly from the deck. So this card's kind of terrible. We kind of just play it for the fact that, there's more names, but we also play it because it's literally the only way to access your archetypal trap cards. Yeah, the only way you can fetch your traps in this deck is to have this stupid thing on field, punch with something that mentions Adventure token, and then waiting until the end of the battle phase to set it, meaning you can't even get your traps turn 1. So it is really unfortunate, but again, it's literally the only way you're going to be accessing your traps without hard drawing them, so what can you do? Another familiar card for the Adventure token package is the Wandering Griffin Rider. This is one of the most important cards in that engine, saying that when a card or effect is activated while you control an Adventure token quick effect, you can shuffle this card into the deck, and if you do, negate that activation and destroy it. It also says that you can special it if you control no monsters, as well as controlling an Adventure token, meaning that it can kind of protect you, I guess, for certain turns while also being able to get on board early. ability, as well as being a very good out to things like Barrier Statue of the Stormwinds. This is basically the quintessential boss monster of the entire archetype. There's nothing else nearly as strong, well maybe nearly as strong, but nothing else as strong as a free searchable Omni Negate in the deck, so maxing out on Griffin Rider is kind of a mandatory. A card that may be familiar because it saw almost as much play as Griffin Rider when it came out is Illegal Knight, or at least it saw some form of testing, because Illegal Knight is another disruption sort of card and another boss monster for the archetype that says quick effect, you can target up to 2 cards your opponent controls, giving control of this card to your opponent, and if you do, return that card or cards to the hand, and you can only use this effect once per turn, obviously. So Illegal Knight is another fantastic piece of disruption, especially stacked on top of Griffin Rider, being able to quick effect bounce 2 cards on your opponent's field to the hand. That's really nice. It may seem a bit weird or a bit unconventional that it gives itself to the opponent. However, I promise you when we get into the later effects, it'll make a lot of sense and is actually a really good benefit for you, trust me. That's it for the archetypal monsters. We also just have some like hand traps here, 3 Ash, 3 Imperm. Kind of just generic disruptions on top of your already existing stuff, because the deck only has so much on its own. So your only other way to get access to your adventure token is with Curse of Aura Meteor, which is a continuous spell that also came out alongside Teasia in Darkwing Blast. It says during your main phase you can special an adventure token to either field, then send 1 card from your hand to the graveyard, and that has the adventure token Xenolock. And if a monster you control is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can special summon an adventure token to either field, and obviously both effects are hard once per turns. So again, literally the only other way to get access to your adventure token. However, it is not near strong enough to run at more than 1 copy. It is also heavily searchable with Teasia, and while it is kind of annoying that you have to send a card just to summon the token when Right doesn't say anything like that, despite being arguably a very much stronger spell, I mean, what can you do? Plus, it's not like the biggest deal when we get to the later cards in the archetype, but you need to play at least one of these just in case you don't see Right or a way to get into it. So next up we have Fateful Adventure, which was mentioned in the Rite of Aramesir text. Should I have mentioned it earlier? Probably, I don't know. But Fateful Adventure is probably one of, if not the strongest cards in the entire deck, and here's why. It says once per turn, the first time a monster you control equipped with an equipped card will be destroyed by battle, it is not destroyed, which does come up, believe it or not, that does come up. It says you can only use each of the following effects of Fateful Adventure once per turn. During your main phase, you can add 1 monster that mentions Adventure token from your deck to your hand, then send 1 card from your hand to the graveyard. And if a monster is normal or special summoned, you can take an equip spell that mentions Adventure token from your deck and either add it to your hand or equip it to an Adventure token you control. So this does so much for your deck. Not only can you search literally any of these monsters, you can also get access to your equip spells, which are also very, very strong and important for the archetype, all in the form of 1 card that you can just keep using over and over again every turn. Sending a card from hand to grave can seem a bit obnoxious, but much like Aura Meteor, I will explain this here in a minute. But mainly just being able to grab 2 cards from your deck essentially for free each turn is super important for this strategy, even more so than in the engine that ran it. So believe it or not, Adventure does have field spells. They were mentioned in the sort of hidden effect of Water Enchantress. Starting off with Zaralam the Dark Palace, it says while you control a monster equipped with Dunel the Noble Arms of Light, your opponent cannot activate cards or effects during the battle phase. It and the other one have effects based on what you have equipped to it. So this one just says monsters you control equipped with Starlit Papillon are unaffected by your opponent's activated effects. This is Forest of Lost Flowers, by the way. Zaralam says once per turn when your adventure token destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you can inflict damage to your opponent equal to that destroyed monster's original attack. And Forest of Lost Flowers says you can actually draw a card. And both of them say that once per turn during your main phase, if the previous effect was activated this turn, you can add 1 field spell that mentions adventure token from your deck or grave to the hand, except another copy of itself. So basically, you can use one of them and then fetch out the other at the end of the battle phase, or during your main phase, sorry. So in terms of pushing for game, Zaralam is obviously the much better one, but if you're going first, Forest of Lost Flowers is the one you typically want to go for, being able to make your adventure token or anything that you have equipped with Starlit Papillon unaffected by your opponent's activated effects, which is really strong. But let's go ahead and get to these equip spells, shall we? What do these equip spells do? Well, Dracoback is probably the most familiar. It is the only one that was actually played in the engine. It says equip only to a monster you control. All of them can be equipped to literally any of your monsters. You can only control 1, and that also applies to all of them. It says you can only use each of the following effects of Dracoback once per turn. While this card is equipped to a non-effect monster, you can target 1 card your opponent controls and return it to the hand. And all of them have the effect that if it's sent to the graveyard, you can target an adventure token you control and equip this card to that target. So of course, being able to equip it from your grave to your adventure token is really nice when you're sending cards from your hand to the grave with Fateful Adventure, Curse of Aura Meteor, etc, etc. But for Dracoback specifically, being able to bounce literally any card every turn is really strong. It'd be a lot better if it was a quick effect, of course, but that's what you have Illegal Knight for, let's be real. But Dracoback is a very good card, being able to outpower cards at the time such as Skill Drain, Mystic Mine, etc. And it is still one of the strongest cards in the entire archetype when it comes to board breaking, because it just doesn't have much else going for it. So Dunel and Papillon are actually there for stat modulation. So Dunel says the equipped monster gains 500 attack for each monster you control with a different name that mentions Adventurer token. Unfortunately, not Adventurer tokens itself. So like you can have like 3 monsters that mention Adventurer token and a single Adventurer token on the field. However, it'll only gain 3 stacks because it doesn't say Adventurer tokens that you control. So that is kind of unfortunate, but it still makes your monsters very beefy. And then Starlit Papillon is a Shizuku style effect, saying monsters your opponent controls lose 500 attack for each monster you control with a different name that mentions Adventurer token. So of course, again, Papillon is a lot stronger overall than Dunel, because, you know, this applies to all of your opponent's monsters. So that means that your bigger monsters such as Griffin Rider and Illegal Knight and things like that will have a much easier time beating over things or unable to be attacked when all of your opponent's monsters are drained, as opposed to just one of your monsters being very big. Not to mention, in combination with Forest of Lost Flowers, it is a very strong way to start your board. We're also playing just 2 random Lightning Storms in here. The deck needs a little bit more board breaking going second, because it can at least do things going first, sorry. And then 1 Foolish, because this is actually really good for your Water Enchantress, and is a staple in any package running it. The archetype actually does have 2 trap cards, the first of which being Thunder Discharge, that says if you control an Adventurer token, you can target 1 monster you control equipped with an equip card that mentions Adventurer token, destroy as many monsters your opponent controls as possible with attack less than or equal to that monster. Then you can equip 1 equip spell that mentions Adventurer token from your hand or graveyard to 1 monster you control, and you can only activate 1 Thunder Discharge per turn. This card is an absolute blowout. It is literally the strongest disruption that you could get on your first turn if you're able to set up literally anything, the only problem being that this is completely unsearchable on turn 0. When you do have it though, it is absolutely going to win you games. Being able to just nuke a bunch of monsters and equip a different equip spell is really strong. Not to mention, between Dunel and Starlit Papillon, especially if you have both equipped, you can make your Adventurer token or any monster that mentions it like really large, and then just get a free nuke for basically all of your opponent's monsters. We also have Breath of Resurrection that says if you control an Adventurer token, special summon up to 2 monsters from your hand and or graveyard with different names, but banish them when they leave the field. Then you can equip 1 equip spell that mentions Adventurer token from your hand or grave to 1 monster you control, and you can only activate 1 Breath of Resurrection per turn. So even ignoring the fact that you can just easily bring back destroyed Griffin Riders or Illegal Knights for extra ways to disrupt your opponent, this is also one of your better comeback cards, because like, not only are you special summoning things, you know, that can special summon things like Teasia, you can special summon things like Water Enchantress, you can also just get a free equip, which can make your things very large or your opponent's stuff very small if you have the Adventurer token. Overall, both trap cards are really strong. I just wish there was more ways to search. So the extra deck kind of doesn't matter. I think in all of the replays, I never touched it once. You almost never go into these, but these are things that you can at least try to go into if you really want to. Psychic End Punisher you can make, I believe, with 2 level 4s and an Ash Blossom. Cheng Ying is a level 4, a level 7, and an Ash Blossom. I'm sorry, not a level 4 and a level 7. You can use it. You can make it using a level 4, a level 3, and an Ash, or a level 7 and an Ash. Same thing with Baron, which is arguably stronger. Trishula you can go into with 2 Water Enchantresses and an Ash. Same with Power Tool Braver Dragon. And then Power Tool Dragon, of course, with any of your level 4s and an Ash. And this one's actually really good for the deck because you can get free equip spells from your deck. Plus, you can kind of just make it indestructible by equipping it with your equip spells and then just getting free equip spells back when you send them to the grave. Leviair you can make with 2 level 3s, but you kind of just will almost never come up with this. Abyss Dweller is Abyss Dweller. Bagooska is Bagooska. Zeus is Zeus. Link Spider is good if in case your opponent has Inspector Border and you don't have Dracoback, I guess. Phoenix, Cerberus, Unicorn, Access Code, just generic Link toolbox good stuff. And then the side deck, we actually use every Adventurer token card, so we are just playing 1 extra copy of each of the traps, because this is actually in the build before I put the Lightning Storms in. So that was a very quick rundown. I think compared to most of my Sleeper Sundays, I'm kind of iffy right now, a bit lightheaded from talking so much, but I'm not going to waste any more time. I know you guys really want to see what this deck can actually do in its purest form, so let's go ahead and get right into the replays, and I'll see you when they're done. And there we have it, everybody. Those are some of the replays that I managed to get with the Adventure Token strategy. Some of them are a bit old, like the Lyrilusc one you can tell was pre-2 Recital, but I think there were some overall decent games to showcase the main strengths of the deck, which we're going to go into right now. Starting off, the lack of extra deck reliance provides resistance to stun cards involving it, like Artifact Scythe and everything. And if you lose your extra deck, I mean, like, you really don't care. Like, to an extent means you could play cards like Prosperity or Extrav if you really want. I just like the draw effect of the field spell too much. Rite of Aramesir does so much in one card. Like, giving you the token and the card that searches any monster in your archetype and any equip spell in your archetype essentially sets up your entire end board on its own. There's a reason why it was used in the engine. Cards like Dracoback give you an out to almost any problematic card in the game, particularly strong Floodgates and other things like that, especially if you hard draw it and you run into things like, I don't know, like Gozen maybe. Even if the archetype doesn't really care much about certain Floodgates, such as, I think there can only be one, skill drain, things like that. Access to a recurring Omni Negate is obviously very strong, I don't think I really need to explain that. And the swarming the deck has is absolutely off the charts. Like, with everything being able to special itself just by controlling the token, or even no monsters within between Illegal Knight and Griffin Rider, you can easily punch for massive damage, or theoretically go for link plays or toolbox plays without locking yourself, and you can either chip apart your opponent's board or prevent them from setting up theirs in the first place. With every strength, there's at least a weakness. Let's go ahead and get right into them, everybody. If you can't make the token, you can't play. There are a good few ways to make the tokens or to access the cards that do it, but seeing a hand that doesn't get you access to the token will more often than not lose you the game. The trap cards are super strong, but with only one way to search them, they end up being either played at too many copies and bricking when you're forced to go second, or not enough and never seeing them at all. Going second can be really hard due to the only native board breaking in the deck being Illegal Knight and Dracoback, which are fantastic, don't get me wrong, but it's assuming all of the effects are to get to both it and the token already went off, in which case you're probably already going to win anyway if your opponent couldn't or didn't stop you. The sheer amount of equip spells do absolutely nothing on their own and can end up clogging your hand, though they're really necessary to play at multiple copies each, which makes it even harder to get your real plays off. There's also no real payoff. Like, you don't necessarily make a big end board full of disruptions half the time, or other than a beefy token, you don't really sit on much of anything. So how do we make Adventurer better? So we need more ways to actually summon the token that do more than just summon the token. Rite of Aramesir is literally the perfect card for the archetype, in that it both gets you your token as well as Fateful, which is essentially the strongest card in the deck. And Aramesir is cool that it gave you another way to access the token and technically two ways to access it, but that's literally all it does, it just summons the token, so at the cost of a discard too, which is kind of dumb. But it's at least one more way to get out your token easily, while also doing something else would be really helpful, like, because if you can't make your token, you're fucked. So maybe just a spell, a quick play would actually be really nice, that maybe summons your token and then like equip something to it from somewhere. I'm hesitant to say the deck, but like at least even the Grave would work. But something like that with the Adventure token Xenolock on it, so it's not super strong outside of it, that would be awesome. Or even if we don't get another token summoner, just give the deck a way to play without needing the token. Like, it's one thing to make an archetype revolve around a single vanilla monster, of which there's a lot more than I really realized, wow. But it's another to make the cards of the archetype absolutely unplayable without it. So either just a way to make a token with a secondary effect, or a way to do at least something without it other than just specialing Griffin and Illegal Knight, would be much appreciated. I think another boss monster would feel really good. Griffin Rider and Illegal Knight are absolutely fantastic cards, but I think a third would wrap up the power level of the deck really nicely. If we're on the topic of another disruption specifically, I'd propose something maybe similar to Illegal Knight in that it does something and then gives itself over to the opponent so that you can beat over it and do burn damage, which I don't know if I explained that earlier. That's the reason why you give Illegal Knight to your opponent, is so that they have something you can beat over and then either burn or get a free draw off of, especially because your things can't be destroyed by battle once per turn, so even if the Adventure token is the same size, you can just crash. But I think specifically, maybe something that interacts with the opponent's grave for some more varied, like, actual disruption. Something that's a quick effect and, like, similar to the Ishizu cards in a sense. Probably not as broken, maybe only, like, 1 card, maybe 3 cards wouldn't be too great, or too, like, insane because it's locked into Adventurer token, but it would give the deck more ways to play on the opponent's turn, as well as making it easier to do so in general because you'll have so many different ways to interrupt, rather than just relying on getting Griffin and or Illegal Knight. But it would also just give you so much more variety in your end board, which could make it a lot stronger than just sitting on a fat token. Finally, give us an easier way to search the trap cards. Like, we have so many ways of accessing all the respective spells in the deck, including Right, but only one way to grab the trap cards, aka arguably the best sources of interruption in the entire deck other than Griffin, and it's stuck on a level 4 that has to let something battle and sets it during the end of the battle phase. Literally probably the worst card in the entire archetype. And you can't even use it that turn to make up for it or anything like that. So literally just any way to get the traps on board turn 0 and not later would be really good because they're incredibly strong for disrupting your opponent's plays, especially Thunder Discharge. So like, just please Konami, anything. But with that out of the way, what else can I say about the Adventurer archetype? This deck is so much fun. I made this based on No Penguin's video on it, which you should totally go check out. I'll try to remember to link it either up in the top right annotation or in the description, but he made a video talking about how the deck was intended to be played, and I sort of made it as a joke, like, wouldn't it be so funny if I tried to play pure adventure? And then I went and I did a few replays, like, I think at least half of the ones that you saw, and I was like, wow, this is really fun. The way the deck interacts makes it a lot simpler than a lot of the other decks, which is literally just punch a token, punchy, big bungus, and I love those style of decks. Like I said, it just simplifies the game down a lot more, while also still having more modern cards, such as Illegal Knight and Griffin Rider, and being able to use things like hand traps, and I just love all of the mechanics of the archetype. I really just think that with a few more pieces of support, this deck could be a really fun way to play casually with your friends, even more so than it already is. And I mean, hell, maybe you can surprise someone at a regional with it depending on what they get, I don't know. But that's all I have to say about it. Thank you all so much for watching, because that's going to do it for the video. If you liked it, please sure to leave a like, as it helps put this video and the channel into you to recommend it. And if you like this content and you want to see more like it, like the rest of my Sleeper Sunday series, which I make once every month, then perhaps consider subscribing, because we're on our way to 2,500 subscribers by the end of 2022, which we are approaching very, very fast, but we only have a month to do. Not to mention, it supports the channel more than anything else, and it's absolutely free. Remember, every month at the end, I post a poll in my community tab with a few different deck options for what to use for the next episode, but they are only up for a maximum of 24 hours, so be sure to get your vote in if you really want a certain deck in. But once again, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. This is Aurora, signing off.